that one.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're live.
Good evening. I'll call to order the September 11th, 2024 meeting of the Poolesville Planning Commission. We have any, no citizens here, nobody online waiting to make comments?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't believe we can do any of the approval of the minutes.
We could do the July one. The only person who was oh no, that's right, was you. I was thinking that you were. No. Okay, yep, that's correct. We can't do either of them.
So next meeting, we'll have to do 3 months' worth. I did notice the August, very minor, but the none under citizens' comments has.
Oh, it has a space. Yeah.
Minor.
Okay.
And we're going to go on with new business first, correct?
We will do new business first, yes.
All right. New business is the Hart's property applicant request for preliminary plan extension. Mr. Hart's is here. Good timing.
Yep.
Do I need to put my name down here?
No, you're fine.
I'm good. Sorry for being a little bit tardy, folks. I've come before you this evening to request an extension on an extension on an extension on the development of our property. And I may not have had enough of extensions in that little series. We're in really good shape. Hey, Wade. We're in really great shape, I think, for a change. And that is that the final package, we believe, of all the Montgomery County's comments are at Montgomery County. And we're waiting for the multitude of entities that go through that review process. That went in probably right at 2 weeks ago, maybe a little bit longer ago when that went into Montgomery County. And it's primary stormwater management for all of the on-site lots. As you know, every drop of rain needs to stay on the lot. And as we work through that, it just took a little bit of time to get that all done and get the right-of-ways all done that go with the county's access to maintain those individual microgrids and different approaches they're using to take care of the stormwater. The state highway administration, and I think I've shared some of this with you folks in the past, but our initial application on that one went in 2017 or 2018, something like that, when we initially made the first contact with State Highway Administration. And it's been a marathon, past 2-3 marathons, but anyway, that even seems to be coming much closer. And all the hydraulic calculations that went into the issues that we were dealing with the state, and I'm plowing some old ground here, but just to kind of remind you folks, we were down to our input to the drainage basin that services, that sends water through the culvert on Run 07. You know, the culvert that is, in the last 10 years has probably only flooded maybe once. It's really less frequent than it used to be. But anyway, that's 360 cubic feet per second at the peak flow. Of that 360, we are adding, or actually our addition to in the 360 is 2.7 cubic feet per second. That has caused a bit of a stir with the state and a few others, especially I know Wade knows, and a few of these fellows over here too. So anyway, we've been back through that and found that my previous engineer who retired, a wonderful guy until he retired, but no, Charles is great, and it's just the timing of working on this project for so many years. He retired, and so there have been some changes in how things are looked at. The new engineer's gone through, and I thought I would even have him here tonight when we met, but I don't. But the hydraulic calculations now are almost showing that we're not contributing anything to that drainage basin. And the reason being, and I don't know how long you two gentlemen have lived here, but when we have these high flows, the water that goes down 107 from a heavy rain, it goes down and gets through the culvert that we're talking about on Route 107 faster than the whole drainage basin builds up and releases water. So that water goes through, and therefore the peak discharge during that period of time, because of the time lapse, is essentially unaffected. So ultimately, we're looking at a flow, our flow, still being maybe around 2.7 CFS, but it's happening beforehand so it doesn't increase the max based on the, John, I forget what they call the new calculation that they're using. Is it TR6 or 6 or 7, is it? Yeah, so there's a new calculation that you can take in the timing of the flow to determine, whether you're within that peak or you're increasing the peak or whatever. So that's where we're at. The more I thought about it, I wish I'd thought of it earlier, but it makes a lot of sense. So that's where we're at. We'd like to get an extension on this project that, if the fruition of a few meetings, friendly meetings with you folks. You've been very cooperative and helpful to us as we've gone along, and really appreciate that, and helping getting us out of that catch-22 bind that we were in there for quite a while with the state and Montgomery County. I guess, there's always a first time for everything, and might as well do it when you're retired because you got more time to deal with it.
Doesn't seem to help the process, though, does it? Still just as slow.
Yeah, but at least I got the time to try to,
Right.
okay, think through it and push the buttons where I can from my position. Any questions at all at this point?
How much of extension are you asking for?
I think you have a limit on how much you can extend, right?
Yes, yes, so we actually just renew it according to the code, will give us a 1-year extension.
Yeah.
Okay,
1 year? We did 18 months last time. How come it was different?
There was 18 months last time, because
Okay.
that's what it was the previous
changed.
time. So I think the code says 1 year initially, but I think it says you can ask for an extension, but it doesn't give a specific. Because that was 2 times ago, it was 18 months. And so that's why it was last time 18 months. So that was the thought process then. That's what I remember from the
If it
history.
could
That's
be
the only way I
18
came up with that amount.
I don't want it to be 18 months. I think we're down to much, much less. I know the current, well, I guess we're kind of tied together at the hip, but the current owner would like to see us break ground here pretty quick. So, I defer to whatever time you want to give us right now, but, I'd rather go with the larger number that you have in mind and wouldn't have to bother you again on this.
Wade, if that was my mistake, I'm fully able to do with what you want. But that was what I had read in the record, so that was my thought there.
No, 1 year is the extra extension that's typically granted, and just makes it easier for staff.
Yep.
Actually, to keep record keeping, so.
Yes. Yeah.
It works for me.
I just want to highlight that in Niles' memo, it says that Mr. Hartz was here on the 15th of March 2023. And that in the interim, the applicant has worked to address issues, yada, yada, yada. I think I would only have a concern of not granting this request if there wasn't anything being done.
Correct.
So Wade, you have no problem with it?
No, staff recommends this definitely. He's been working through the process diligently.
All right, so should I make a motion here? I make a motion that we grant the Hart's property applicant an extension. That's sufficient? That work, Wade?
That's fine.
Works for me.
No, I'm asking Wade.
Yeah.
The minutes will reflect the
Yes.
appropriate time frame.
Yep. Yeah. I've already
All in
noted.
favor?
Aye.
So what was the time frame?
1 year, 12 months.
Okay, I don't know, my hearing aids aren't.
No, we didn't say, because we
Picking up
weren't sure
real
what was
well.
right.
Yeah, so it's going to be 12 months. Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Arts.
Yep.
All right,
Nice to see you.
Yeah, you bet.
old business. We're going to follow up a discussion on the Cultural Arts District. I believe that's also going to include,
Yeah, so I figured we would do the presentation by John first. So let's go this.
Can I jump in for a minute, Brian?
yeah, always.
Yeah, I think as we're going through this process here, Niles, and John, we all had this discussion of, we've been getting these bits and pieces we've been bringing in, and really not getting anywhere because we've not had a full body of commissioners to have good in-depth conversations, to get good feedback for us to draft stuff to give to you. So I just don't want the body to be frustrated with it, as staff is starting to get frustrated with it, because we want to move forward with this. And so we're under no pressure to get this done, obviously.
Right.
But I just want everybody to hang tight with it and just go through the process. And the more input we get, the more we can start redlining drafts and getting things to you. So this is my personal how I feel, and Niles too. We had a
Yes,
discussion today, so
And-
it's really going to share that with you.
And I think this reminds me a little bit of trying to get the master plan started, like just trying to create some traction.
Yes.
So I'm comfortable with it. I see everybody's doing work, everybody's providing input when they're here and available. And, you know, Chuck's a big part of this, just like everybody else, so his absence is, you know, felt.
And I just want to add, just because we talked about this, and Martin and I talked about this yesterday and earlier before the meeting started. One of the conversations I had with Wade is about, after this meeting, kind of pulling back, see where we're at, see what particulars we want to get to from what you've given us so far as well. So to try to tighten it up a little bit, I'm going to, as I mentioned in the memo, I'm going to meet with Jay, our attorney, on Tuesday, and we'll talk about some of the legal definitions that we've talked about, and sort of get a grounding from a different perspective that we can add at the October meeting. And of course, Chuck will be back and provide the parking element that we've discussed a little bit, and I provided, I believe it was now, last time, a copy for everybody. And I think I can give you, Martin, the actual copy of the parking regulations, because,
Is what you're saying, like, you're going to give us like a Mad Libs kind of thing, where like, you'll just give us like, and we fill the blanks in? Because that,
kind of, yeah. That
would
was
be
my
good, yeah.
idea. My idea was to give sort of more concrete examples
Yeah.
of what we,
like,
from
force us
your-
to plug in what we need to plug in and get going, get it on.
Yes,
Like,
that was
Yes.
kind of the discussion we had this morning, and that's how I
we'll be
kind
doing
of,
this 2 years from now.
right. And so that was kind of the way that I was thinking about it, and that was where Wade and I sort of led to, you know, and then we can kind of go from there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So anyways, I think we're on the same page of like, are we going somewhere or not? That's, okay.
We can't blame Wallace Montgomery this time.
I know.
Right. That's right.
I'm gonna, just for your purposes, Wade, I'm gonna share my screen so that you can see the
Yep.
presentation along.
Are you suggesting, I don't think you are, but that we sort of table this until we have 5 commissioners here?
No, I think it's worth still getting the feedback, because
Yeah.
the more we get perspectives. Because I think that is the key right now to where we're at.
Sure.
And so we can sort of go from there. So let me do this. Go share. Okay, and then I'm going to make this dismiss. And then I'm going to go here and go. I might have to switch over there. Hang on. Okay. Okay, so I'll let John, this was his presentation, so I'll let him start, and then we'll go from there.
All right, so we're trying to get some feedback and get the process started and get everybody thinking about what they want to do or what they'd like to see in there. And the opinions are going to vary. And this is only, the purpose of it is to just start that process of discussion. Things we're going to talk about tonight, define items that to be included within the street level right-of-way. Currently, most of the right-of-way within the town is prescriptive, which means at some point, if a redevelopment of a piece of property happens, you're probably going to have to go ahead and acquire that right-of-way. It's going to be part of the process. Then also, pedestrian crossings. What are you thinking in regards to pedestrian crossings? We can do a bunch of different ways. We can do different vehicles for that. We're going to talk about stormwater devices. No matter what we do these days, we're going to be dealing with stormwater, and it'll have to be probably addressed on site. Then also discuss street parking. That is an issue that's lacking within the downtown area. The town has very little parking available to it, and especially if you're planning to make this an cultural arts district, not just for the residents, but for other people to come and see. So that's going to have to be addressed. And then vegetation, beauty, the beautyscape of the land is an important part. Okay. All right, so currently, the Arts District is basically along Fisher Avenue from Norris down to West Willard, and then Elgin in the middle of it. One of the things that we probably want to consider is that each one of those roads can be addressed in a different way as far as streetscaping goes, to give it a little bit of different character. And you want to make, I'm assuming, probably the Fisher Avenue corridor a boulevard type situation where you have more of a homey feel to it than maybe Norris and Elgin and West Willard. So it'll have to be considered. Okay. All right. This is Montgomery County standards section. It's not very detailed at all. It's 10 feet, and then whatever it varies from the property line. And you can probably address that with additional items within that, but that would be a standard section. You may also want to go ahead and, for stormwater management purposes, make that pervious concrete, so that you can go ahead and get the credit for that. The pervious concrete does have its disadvantages, although they are improving it a lot, and there's several different companies now available that are doing pervious concrete in panels that can be changed in color. They can be also designed, and they're segmental block, basically. They're 6x6 segmental blocks, but that's what they are. And you can get credit for stormwater management underneath the sidewalk. Okay. All right. So this is the form-based codes organization. This is the steps that they use. They go into, we start the planning process, and you probably want to look at each individual piece of property and see if you want different setbacks or if you want to maintain the same setbacks. Okay, and then public standards for streets, you're going to incorporate that. And then one of the things that you probably want to try to avoid is having that homogeneous line of houses or buildings all along the same setback line. You probably want to get some different situations brought on. Can you hit that form-based
Oh, yes.
thing there?
Yep, so we're going to just do this. And then
There you go.
We're
All
going to
right,
make
this
this
is-
full screen.
Yeah. This is a little bit of how it can be transformed, and you can get a different look if it plays.
Yeah, it's playing. It's
There
just
we
taking
go.
a second.
All right. So you have your standard section up, and then you come in with, much like what we did at CVS, those false windows, okay? And it can be brought in many different ways in order to transition the place. Some of the other ways they're doing it is taking existing buildings and adding dormers, things like that, to the existing buildings. And also walkways to give that offset position. All right. And there's another one. That's what it was. This is what they're envisioning and what will take place. And as you can see, they offset the buildings. They gave it a little bit of streetscape character. And then the awnings. Awnings, believe it or not, are fairly effective at creating a different tone to the streetscape condition. Of course, the missing tooth situation that we talk about occasionally, where you have vacant lots, you want to fill those areas in. in some manner or form. And this is a more of a boulevard look. That's the typical 1970s boulevard look, and we want to try to develop it and fill it in. And if you'll notice, the buildings move closer to the street in order to give that comfort. That's one of the things that was very interesting in the presentations that were done several years ago at MML. Okay,
So we have
just jump
to
back in.
Jump back in, just give me a
Yeah,
second.
no problem.
It's- There we go.
All right. So this is more of a typical different types of walkways you can come up with. This is a standard section of Merrill on the left-hand side is the typical section of the Montgomery County street situation. Kind of and then you get to the right-hand side, and you have more of a paving section. Gives a little bit more of a country character to it. But the one thing that you notice on the right-hand side is the lack of offsets on the building frontages. They're fairly uniform and down that way. That is an acceptable way of doing it, but you just have to be aware by adding those awnings and projections out there gives it a little bit more character, a little bit more homey of a feel. And you're probably going to want to go ahead and look at the different architectural frontages too, so that they're not all uniform. We don't trying to get away from cookie cutters. Pedestrian crossings. Well, you can come up with all kinds of designs if you wanted to, especially with stamped asphalt. We have some of that in town already. It's held up very well. The traffic count has to be a certain amount, and if we were having a lot higher traffic counts then we would have to watch how the stamped asphalt is holding up. There is limits to it. And in the past, when we're down in the Montgomery County area or the state highway area of 109 and also White's Ferry Road, Fisher Avenue, then we would probably have to get an agreement or easements for that to take place, so that there would be something done there. You can also do it in different colors, different patterns. You can go to a herringbone pattern for the stamped asphalt. Gives it a little different character. The detection strips that you see at the curbing there, they do have to meet the new standards for those. That one particular one is not, it is a rubber mat that was in place. So that's no longer acceptable. Okay. All right. Something else to consider, and we have this problem already. Not that we're looking for redevelopment in that part of town where the road gets narrow and the sidewalks get extremely narrow, but you do have to consider ADA accessibility. There are ways to limit it, but you do have to provide for passing areas, and also you do have to provide for stormwater drainage. If you look to the right of the picture, just below the doorway, you see that there's actually a slot there, and that's a drainage slot that goes to underground drainage system. And again, placement of obstacles can be an issue. So that's part of the design process that has to take place. And again, you get into this is not a new building, this is an existing building, older building. So the frontages are pretty well established. Okay. All right, parking. We do have an issue with parking within the town. If you're coming from out of the area, the town doesn't have any municipal parking lots per se. They have limited parking areas, and also street parking can be a problem because some of our roads become extremely narrow, and we are in an agricultural reserve, which then would inhibit movement of some of the agricultural vehicles up and down the roadway, and that would have to be considered.
As long as we keep Fisher and Elgin clear wide enough, we should be good, right? Like, we could do something like
But
little,
you're gonna need West Willard too.
yeah, West Willard, but I mean, like Norton and stuff like that, we could.
Yeah, Norris, you can narrow that.
Norris,
That's something else that can be done. Yes. Yeah, and Wooten, on the backside of Wooten. All right. All right. Trees and stormwater devices. Again, there's different ways of doing it. What is actually underneath this is a planting island that has biomaterial in there, so you get credit for stormwater management within that tree planting. Also, you may want to consider the types of trees that are going in there. One of the most beautiful things I always see within the town is in the springtime when the cherry trees are all blooming along Fisher Avenue and other parts of town. It does give it a unique character. And so these planters should reflect your wishes for that. You may be specific in the types of plantings that you want to do in order to get that feeling. Okay, next one. All right, this is another interesting one. This is actually a biofilter that's been, normally what you see is those big swales full of biomedia, and it may be grassed in, and sometimes they're very awkward to mow and maintain. And the one thing that the town should consider is that maintenance. In this particular one, there's a biomedia mix underneath, and then there's a rock placement on top. The problem becomes is if you end up compacting that media, then the biofilter material doesn't do what it's supposed to do. So it has to be considered in the design. All right, building frontages. We talked about it a little bit earlier. You probably want to look at what you're going to be doing on those building frontages. And there was talk of having those buildings possibly 2-3 stories high in future buildings, and it should be considered how that frontage of those buildings are going to look. You don't want to just have the very street level frontage with character, and then the rest of it's just a block building going up. It'll be one of those things that you should decide early on that you're going to have within the code, and to give options also to the developers in order for development and redevelopment. Okay, in summary, the development of a vision for this district, it's going to take time. Also, form-based is a complex issue. Okay. The good news is you don't have to. There's no date this has to be met, but it should be comprehensive in nature. Consideration: if a board member sees something, please take a picture. We can always take a picture and figure out. Tell us where it was and what it is, and then we can delve around in it and try to figure something else that can be used to meet your requirement, or somebody else may want to add something to it. Okay. And that's it.
Niles and I were talking about how, like, if somebody came in now and wanted to and proposed some kind of something that really went against like what we're looking at doing here, because this is in the process, we would have some kind of standing to say, well, hold on a second, right? I mean, that's the way it was explained to me on a different matter from Jay is that you can't just like have somebody want to do something and say, oh, okay, we're gonna start the process tomorrow, like after they put their plan forward. But like if the process has already started, is that right?
No, you're correct with that. And even the bigger picture is stormwater for this cultural arts district is problematic right now. John's going to be giving a presentation to the commissioners to detail. There is no stormwater infrastructure in this area. It flows to the post office, which has a very small receiving line to carry the stormwater through. And so everything has to be upgraded to even carry stormwater. So right now, there's a blocking point that not much can be done until this gets addressed. And John, jump in if you want.
Correct. One of the things that the presentation you'll see on Monday night, is a discussion of where you are as far as stormwater management goes. It's going to limit what can take place, especially from Norris this way. Although that is not necessarily in the cultural arts district, the stormwater has to go that way.
Right.
And then there is some other blockage points along the Elgin, West Willard, Fisher area. There's a couple little blockage points that would have to be addressed there too. And one of the things that in the new stormwater regulations is we're addressing, Montgomery County is basically not addressing quantity necessarily. They're addressing quality. So we have to figure out who and how does those improvements take place to get to where you need to be. It's not dire. I mean, there are certain restrictions that there definitely need upgrades.
But if somebody wants to redevelop, for example, then we can put the onus on them, right? Like,
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
And that's the problem. So, yeah, we know the Kohlhoff property up on the corner of Norris and Wooten is looking to do something with the property and is really fumbling right now because stormwater is a huge issue.
yeah,
So even though we go through what we're doing right now, there's some underlying infrastructure needs that need to be addressed also for anything to even occur for what we're dealing with.
Right.
So both what you said and the technical issues as well.
Some of these things are known as off-site improvements
Yeah.
that have to take place if a developer were to come in.
yeah,
And that would be a decision that others would have to make, how does it?
yep.
Yeah, we're hopeful that some of the streetscape funds may be applicable and to be able to address some of the stormwater issues on Fisher Avenue that are the receiving lines for some of the stormwater, so. we'll see.
Speaking of those funds, where are we anywhere closer? I mean, I know that there's like a lot of processes and boxes we have to check with the state or the federal government. Are we any closer to getting that money?
No, so, no.
That's the wrong answer.
I just received an email from State Highway 2 days ago, and I shared it with Jim. And every 2 weeks, I send the same email, what's the update? So there's been as Trone's going to be moving out, new staff members are moving in to take over. They are checking all the, dotting the i's and crossing the t's on every piece of paperwork that is moved in that office. And so no notice to proceed has been granted from the federal government yet for those funds. They anticipate it within 2 weeks, and I've heard it 6 times now. So that's where we are. And Jim actually sent an email to Trone's office requesting the same information, and they're doing a back channel kind of search to try to push it along also.
Those guys work through January like the president does, or no?
So they have a similar time frame. The Congress actually starts before the presidency does.
Right.
So the
Like-
new Congress
Right.
comes in at the beginning of January.
That's right. Okay, like, okay, so we have time to see if we can get Trone to help us.
Right, and Mr. Trone's going to be here in Poolesville on October 2nd, Niles?
Yes. So actually, we'll have October 2nd will be Trone, and then he and Ostabrook and a bunch of people will be for the Poolesville Day breakfast as well. So we can have some discussions about that as well.
You guys get Westmore for that breakfast?
They're still working on that. We literally, Wade can back us up on this. We met with the governor when we were at MML.
I got a selfie.
Yep, exactly. And we expressly asked him about Poolesville Day, so they know it's on the radar. I know Ed has been texting with the governor, so we're trying to get all the schedules to work for that.
All right. Sorry, we're getting off topic.
No, that's okay.
But no, we need to work all those, I mean, it's all tied together. So,
Yeah, I would love to get that started, the streetscape stuff. That'd be so great.
yes.
Yep.
I know I'm preaching to the choir. So.
But so any questions on what John presented or
I
anything
don't have
further?
questions, but this is a helpful document. I found that very useful. Thank you.
But we need to start getting to the weeds
Yeah.
with some of our stuff.
Yeah.
And that's part of what I wanted to talk about related to what was also in the packet, which is the sign code stuff. I know we talked a little bit about the sign code last time, and next time I'm going to provide some direct updated information on our code based on your guys' feedback and where we are. But there's a couple of things. Wade had found some other codes that I found had some interesting things to mention. So one, the first one in the packet, which starts on page 4 of the packet, this is actually Montgomery County's sign code, and it goes through and has a little bit of information about what we've been talking about, which is this historic sign information. That's found on page 9. Their version of it is very loose. It sort of basically says staff has to figure out what a historic sign is and make sure that it applies in the area. And obviously, from what Chuck has mentioned, and I think I've heard from other commissioners, that's probably not the approach that you want to take in terms of the language. The feedback I got was you wanted more specific things: size of sign, illumination of signs, things like that. So we'll probably go, and I'll talk about that in a minute, more in that direction. But what I like about the Montgomery County Code was the use of graphics to kind of show you, and that's on page 6 and 7, that sort of shows where on buildings it would be, that kind of stuff. And if we're thinking sort of that sort of historic look to signs or things like that, then we could sort of show those demonstrations of like the hanging signs or how we want wall signs or something like the mural conversation that we had 2 meetings ago, where we want to redefine some of this stuff. Maybe these type of visual graphics might help. And a lot of, Gaithersburg just did a whole new revamping of their entire zoning code. And one of the things that their research found was adding more tables. And I've been working on a table for the sign code, and I'm trying to work out how best to display that information. But more tables, more charts, and then more graphics to kind of help guide people in what we're looking for, and utilizing what we've done with pictures in the design guidelines, but maybe taking something like that. So that was one thing that I thought was interesting from this one. Did you have anything to add on this one, Wade?
No, exactly my thoughts.
Yep, perfect. Okay, and then the other one that we found was St. George's, and they have an actual arts district. So one thing that I had mentioned about St. George's that I thought was really interesting is that they have the design guidelines. It's in package page 15, and they go kind of down with it starts on page 15, but they have specific kind of criteria. They have specific color criteria and things like that. So this is sort of the reverse. It has materials that you can use, colors that you can use. It's very, very specific. So this is sort of shows you the other side of it. And again, based on our feedback, last time you guys liked very much the old Georgetown design guidelines, which I added at the end of the packet, is sort of a happy medium, but I think there might be things that we want to take from the sign regulations, which you really see on 19, where you have, specific adjustments of freestanding signs, poles, those definitions, and then also applying things like illumination and things like that. Because, for example, even in the Georgetown ones, they talk about, internal illumination, uplighting, things like that they allow. But we might want to be more specific and utilize some of this language that the St. George's has of being very specific. So I wanted to give you a range of options to see what you guys were thinking. Because as I said from previous discussions, that's what we've been kind of looking at, is what level of detail do we want and how do we want to give options. And that's the other thing that we were talking about with what John was talking about. With these frontages, with these elevations, we can give some options and use those images. So did you have anything else on this one as well, Wade?
No, that was perfect.
All right. So any questions or feedback on that?
I think you're right. I think we're going to pull things together from each of these.
Yeah.
in my opinion. There's, the St. George's didn't really address, at least that I can remember, the awnings, and if we want to be using awnings, we probably want to make sure we
Yes, and I think
reading awnings.
that's one thing that we can look a little bit more specifically about. I know a couple of instances and some other stuff that I looked at that talks specifically about how wide awnings can be, if you can have lettering on awnings, for example. I believe it is Gaithersburg that talks about that, actually, and so that we can address some of those things in it, too. So what styles we want, what types we want. And so I can pull that all in the discussion with Jay. We can bring in all of those sort of technical elements and start to put together a document that kind of says, as Martin sort of said, here's the Mad Lib version. We have A, B, or C, what do you want to do? Kind of what we did with the definition for art space that was at the last meeting, where, you know, the Blacksburg had like 4 different definitions. And, you know, Lexi had mentioned that she really liked C. So that was sort of the way that I thought we would pursue that. So we can give you those kind of optionality to pick what you want and to work it through what you want.
It's good.
Yeah.
And I also think for me and maybe others on the board, having the visuals will be helpful to understand what it is that we're saying.
Yeah, and
You know what we're regulating.
exactly. And I think part of that, you know, that's one of the things I liked about the Form-Based Institute, which John showed you a little bit of, is they have some, and I shared some past examples that they had done in a previous packet. We can pull those back up. But they have some good, like 3D images, and it's kind of like that idea of sharing, okay, we're thinking about, we want to have, you know, the stores up closer to the road so that you have walkways that people can walk down and the awnings to cover them. So we're encouraging pedestrian, as we did in the master plan. And so therefore, we can utilize that kind of visual orientation to give people an idea of, this is what we want. We want it to look kind of like this, and sort of present it that way.
And back on the form-based
Yeah.
zoning, that I would encourage us to consider impervious or just forward thinking about that type of material. And really, I think maybe even starting a list of acceptable tree species for us.
So we already have a list that we generally use, and we can pull that for next time, but we can look at maybe specific ones. I know one thing that John and I discussed was trees that burrow deeper rather than out, so that the trees themselves, you know, are sort of more contained in that space next to the street.
Yep.
Rather than having their roots spread out and that.
Pumping up the
and
sidewalks.
Exactly. And so that was one of the things that we discussed. But that was just sort of an offhanded conversation. Wade, did you have, you looked like inquisitive there.
No, I'm taking my notes. No,
Okay.
this is perfect because we want to gather the vision.
Yeah.
So we could put it into an ordinance and make it something. So
Yeah.
this is exactly what we need to do.
So we can, John and I can, and Wade can pull together some species that fit those parameters and present that, right? So we can say, this is what you want to, this is the feedback we've gotten, and so this is how we want to do it. And then we can present that.
Do we have anything in our
We would
current?
want a little bit more specific if we want flowering
Yeah.
on the corners or flowering down the sides and evergreens or usually you do a streetscape visionary
Yeah.
project, right, basically.
Yeah.
Do we have anything defined in code now that says these are trees that we find acceptable?
Yes.
Yes, there is a chart actually in the code, in the forest conservation chapter, that says that. And so I can share that with you as well. I had to
Good starting point,
redo it anyways.
And is that, to your knowledge, is that restricted to native species only, or?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't think a golden rain tree is native. It's a Japanese tree.
Yeah.
No trees of life.
No trees of life.
No, it does include all types of trees actually, because the rain tree is on the streetscape up Wooten Avenue for intersections. I haven't looked at it in several years, but I do
Okay.
recall that being on there, and there's some that are actually in place now.
Okay.
It's an interesting species to me because it has year-round interest.
Yeah.
It doesn't just flower.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's been a good parking lot tree in a lot of places.
Yeah.
I just pulled up online. I see a couple places where it's used on the streets.
Right.
But anyway,
we are not beholden to any specific things we can create. We have a blank palette right now.
Yeah. But yeah, no, anything we share like that is good. What?
Nothing.
We will look at the details.
Yeah.
But yes,
And would there be, because, we were talking about different areas that might require different pedestrian crossings because of volume, and you may want a different look in a different area of, even within the cultural arts district. Would that apply to signage as well?
potentially. So even under the current code, if you have more frontage, like for example, if the side of your building is a driveway that goes back to parking behind, you're allowed to have a sign on that side.
Right.
So like, depending on the dynamics of the building, we might still want to keep some of those dynamics. I'm not saying we do,
Right.
but those are already in the code. We do have moments like that.
Those are the only thoughts that popped in my head while we were,
Sorry, what now?
those are the only thoughts I had.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of the tables as well, because that
Yeah.
helps. You know, I think what is nice is to be able to go to a code and instead of reading through 9 pages, be able to go to exactly, okay, here's what I am, commercial, non-commercial,
Yeah.
historic district, and I just follow it along, and here's my dimensions that I can work with.
Yeah, mainly with our current sign code, one of the things is we have so many different types of signs that we declare in different ways that it makes the actual mechanics of the chart sometimes a little bit complicated to fit on the page. So I'm trying to experiment with that, and I found something that I like, but I want to share it first with these guys to make it make sense.
Flow chart,
Yeah,
it's this, then go this way.
yeah.
It's good. Are we wrapping it?
I've got all my thoughts out. I've got nothing else to
I
say.
did want us to mention one thing from the last commissioner meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't do announcements.
Not super important, but there was discussion about how, in the meeting where I think I was in Scotland, where you guys talked to the Willards, or the Clifford and Company, some of the commissioners were very impressed by like how you guys like stood up for like, just the kind of held them to their feet to the fire for the 2,000 square foot, and the PIA and everything like that, and like didn't so yeah, like I appreciate that, and like the other commissioners appreciated it too. Like, nobody wants a planning commission that's like a rubber stamp, and like like it seems like it's a very thinking planning commission and like a fair planning commission, and I think that they appreciate that, and I thought I'd pass that along to you guys. So
Awesome. Thank you.
yeah, thanks for that. Yeah.
I mean, we don't really care what they think, but it's good to
No,
know.
that's good. Yeah. Screw them.
Just know. I'm just kidding, sorry.
All right, so I make a motion, we adjourn on that note.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Have a good night.
Thanks, guys.
Wade, stick around for a second. Can you tell me when we're done, Niles?
Yep, I'm just ending the screen.